Hey, welcome. Today, we're going to talk about learning vocabulary in a way that's, well, just smarter and way more connected. Forget those endless, boring word lists. Let's really dive in.
So, let me ask you something. When you learn new words, do you just try to memorize them one by one? Flashcards, lists, that kind of thing? It's what most of us do, right? But it feels like trying to build a giant wall by gluing one single pebble on at a time. It's slow, it's tedious, and half the time the words just don't stick. Well, the great news is there is a much, much better way. We're going to get into the power of word families. This is all about understanding words by looking at their connections, their relatives, you could say, instead of just treating them like lonely islands. So here's our game plan. First, we'll talk about this whole idea of learning words instead of lists. Then we'll jump into 3 different groups of words, one on power, one on feelings, and one for describing things. And we'll wrap it all up with a new toolkit you can use for literally any word you come across.
Okay, so let's get right into it. The biggest problem with just memorizing a definition is that you totally miss the big picture. See, words don't just exist all by themselves. They have patterns, they have relationships, they have families. The real key here is to make a shift from just memorizing to actually understanding. And that's exactly what we're going to do. All right, our first group of words is all about a single theme, power and control. These are really strong, action-packed words. You're going to see them all over the place, in the news, in history books, even in conversations about the workplace. We'll be looking at these 6 right here. They all have something to do with either using power or giving it up. And to show you how this whole method works, let's do a little deep dive on the first one, harass. So the verb harass, it means to bother someone again and again in a way that's really unwanted or even threatening. The 2 big ideas to remember here are unwanted and persistent. It's not something that just happens once. And here's where it gets cool. Check out the words family. If you harass someone, that's the verb, the action. The act itself is called harassment, that's the noun. And if you want to describe that kind of behavior, you'd call it harassing behavior, and that's the adjective. You see that? By knowing the family, you've instantly tripled your vocabulary on this one concept. It's powerful stuff. And here's a perfect real-world example. Harassing behavior is what we call a collocation, words that just naturally go together. This sentence shows you exactly how you'd use that adjective form in a totally normal conversation. Now, let's look at 2 other words from this group, oppress and suppress. They sound kind of similar, but there's a really important difference. To oppress is about a long-term systemic abuse of power. Think of a cruel government oppressing its citizens. But to suppress is usually a quick, immediate action to stop something, like police suppressing a riot or even you suppressing a laugh. One is a condition, the other is an action. Okay, let's switch gears, removing from the outside world of power to the inside world of our minds. This next group is all about words that help us talk about what we think, what we believe, and how we feel. In this group, we've got a little bit of everything. We have a word for a certain kind of humor, a word for a feeling of complete hopelessness, and words for how we see and understand the world. These are awesome for adding some real depth to your speaking. Let's start with a fun one, sarcasm. Basically, sarcasm is a kind of irony. It's when you say the exact opposite of what you actually mean, usually to be funny or to make a point. The tone of voice is everything with this one. And just like Harris, sarcasm has its own family. The idea itself is the noun, sarcasm. A person or a comment can be sarcastic, that's the adjective. And if you say something in that way, you're speaking sarcastically. That's the adverb. It tells you how you did it. This example is just perfect. I mean, obviously dropping a plate is the opposite of graceful. So the person is saying one thing but meaning the complete opposite, probably to get a little laugh. The word sarcastically is the key. It tells us exactly how he delivered that line. Okay, for our last group, we're talking about words that help us describe the physical world around us, the condition of things, different surfaces, and objects. These are words you'll use every single day. And getting the little differences right will make your description so much clearer. So here we've got words to talk about a messy room, the ground you're walking on, and just the general nature of things. Let's start with a super common one that's actually more interesting than you'd think, mess. Now, the really important thing to get here is that mess can be 2 different things. It can be a noun, right? Like, your room is a mess.
It's describing the state of the room. But it can also be a verb. Please don't mess up my clean kitchen. That's the action of making it untidy.
But wait, it gets even better. Mess is one of those words that becomes extra powerful when it teams up with other words to make phrasal verbs. If you mess up, it means you made a mistake. I totally messed up that test. If you mess with someone, you're bothering them. And if you messed around, you're just acting silly or wasting time. The meaning completely changes.
This slide is fantastic for showing how specific you can be. A road can be flat, meaning it's not on a hill, and it can also be even, meaning there are no potholes. But a table needs to be level, perfectly horizontal, so your drink doesn't slide right off. They're related, but they're not the same. A bumpy road can still be totally level.
So we have looked at all these different words for power, feelings, and descriptions. But the biggest takeaway here isn't just these specific words. It's the method we used. So let's turn this whole idea into a simple toolkit that you can start using today.
Here you go, your new process. 4 simple steps. First, whenever you find a new word, just get its main core meaning. Second, immediately look for its family members, the noun, the verb, the adjective. Third, find its neighbors, other words with similar themes, like oppress and suppress. And last, and this is crucial, find real examples and common word pairings so you can see how people actually use it.
When you start thinking this way in terms of families and connections, you stop just memorizing. You start building this incredible network of knowledge in your head that's way stronger and so much easier to use. So, I guess there's only one question left. Which word family are you going to explore next?